Howdy, 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 howdy. Welcome. Welcome back to another episode of the Theatric Dyspraxic podcast with me, the Theatric Dyspraxic, Brandon. So we've got another show for you today, but we don't have a guest. I've been trying to get other people to be on this show of mine, and I have some people that I've been talking to, so we'll get them on shortly, but I wanted to spend this episode solo to talk about a few things and to read a few things that some people sent me about dyspraxia. I do this thing called theatric readings, where I basically read stuff. If you go on my other channel, you can find some stuff of me reading various things. I've been doing a project where I read the autobiography of Charlie Chaplin, which is something that I just do for myself. I know that there's not really much interest in that, but hey, if you're interested in learning a bit about Charlie Chaplin and you want to hear me read his autobiography or attempting to do a British accent, then by all means do that. But yeah, today we're just going to be talking about a few things, and we're also going to be reading a couple of things. So first of all, I'm not very good with talking. And part of that has to do with my dyspraxia. And I always cringe every time I hear myself played back. Not just my voice, because everybody hates the sound of their own voice when it's recorded. And I do feel like I talk weird. I don't know, the way that I pronounce certain things. And just the way that I talk, I sound very nasally to me. I sound very nerdy. And I don't know, I feel like at various points my southern accent comes out. And I don't know, part of me doesn't want to be associated with that. But I should be proud of my southern heritage. And I use a lot of filler words. That's another thing too. When I hear my own voice, I'd notice that I never seem to know where I'm going with the sentence. Every time I talk, it's like I just hear myself talk, and I just sound so unintelligent in my speech. I sound like I don't have a very good vocabulary. And it's not that, because if you read my writing, you can see that, I can formulate sentences coherently, and I can use, bigger words or, more descriptive words. But whenever I'm just talking, I don't know, my brain just gets lost. And I think it's because of the disconnect between the speech center of my brain and my mouth, I guess. So it's hard for my mouth or my brain to keep up, I guess. There's always that delay. That's part of having dyspraxia. And I don't know if it's an American versus UK type thing, if it's because I'm American and most of the other dyspraxics that I talk to are British or Irish or just from the UK in general. But to me, I only notice it in myself, the speech difficulties. When I talk to other dyspraxics, we have these meetings and stuff. In fact, we just had one today. It's Friday. We always have one every Friday. And it's always great. I love these guys. They're some of my great friends. Some of them will probably be listening to this podcast. So if you are, hello, thank you. One of them, I'm actually going to be reading something that they sent me. But anyway, it could just be because they're British and I'm American, so all British people just sound like super posh to me. But they always seem to be able to know what they're saying and know where they're going whenever they're talking. And I always feel like I stumble on my words. And whenever I'm explaining something and when I'm talking about something, it's like there's always a roadblock inside my mind where it's like I know the basic idea of what I'm trying to say. It's just like finding the right words, and they don't come instantly like they're supposed to. So I always tend to struggle. And it's easier for me when I'm having a conversation rather than just what I'm doing right now, just talking, and I feel like I'm rambling. I always feel like I'm rambling whenever I'm just sitting there talking. And I always miss a point that I was trying to make. It's always hard to make that point. And I just don't notice it in my dyspraxic friends. So I don't know if if it is a dyspraxia thing. I think it is. It seems like it, but maybe it's just I don't pick up on it because of the differences between the accents and the dialects. But yeah, so if you hear me stumble upon my words, if I use a lot of filler words, words like it's not because I'm not an intelligent person or anything like that. It's just that it's really hard for me to formulate my thoughts into coherent speech instantly. Sometimes it takes a while. So, that's the whole point of filler words, is that it gives your brain a respite to to have more time to find the words that you're looking for, rather than it all just coming out, flowing naturally. Obviously, if something is scripted, then you usually don't use a lot of filler words, but in everyday speech, most people use them just because, and it's pervasive in every language. That's another interesting thing. Every language has their filler words, and they're always different. Some of them are similar, like in some countries' language may be like ah, oh, and for us it's like I use a a lot, and even if it's something that the people I'm talking to wouldn't know, I go So anyway, let's get into this right now. Hopefully you're still listening. I don't know how interesting this is, because whenever you talk, you never really know how it comes across, and then once you play it back, you're just like, man, I'm just talking out of my bum. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, I did my first podcast and my first interview with Dyspraxic Help for You, Billy Stanley, or the Billy Stanley of Dyspraxic Help for You. He has his own podcast. He's had some notable people on his show, which has brought about some interesting conversations. But I had him because he helped me set up this podcast and get started. And he's given me some great advice. I had him on, and our interview lasted really, really long. It was a very long interview because we just had a lot to talk about. And I had quite a few questions because it was my first one. I was really worried about having dead air, so I wanted to make sure that whatever I did on this podcast, I was prepared, so that there wasn't just a bunch of just dead space. I'm not as worried about that now because I could just edit out any notable pauses or awkward silences, but we didn't have any of that, and the conversation just flowed really well. And I guess I should just believe in my conversational abilities a bit more, because when I'm talking to people, things just kind of flow naturally, because I like to talk to people. I'm better one-on-one than with groups, and it's not because I'm anxious in a group or anything like that. It's just because I never know when to talk in a group, because most of the time when I'm in a group, they do a good job at dominating the conversation, whereas I'm just like, well, I have things that I could contribute, but when can I interject? Because it just seems like, this person will talk, then this person will talk, and I'm just trying to find an opening to say what I'm trying to say. And then whenever I try to take that opening, to seize that opening and make my point, then somebody else starts talking right at the same time. And then people are listening to that guy, and I'm just kind of like, I try to get a word in edgewise, and I just never can in a group. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but yeah, it tends to be how it goes. But when it's just me and one other person, especially when we're talking about stuff like dyspraxia or talking about just interesting things that we both know a bit about or have in common, then I could talk forever with them. And I tried to get through all the questions with Billy, and we had a great conversation. We had and I had to split it up into 3 different parts, and obviously some people have heard it. I've heard some good feedback. I've had a few others reach out saying that they wanted to be on it, and I'm looking forward to having them on as well. If everything goes as planned, and unless something comes up, then I'm going to be recording an interview with somebody tomorrow. But yeah, I would like to have anybody who wants to come on. If you have something to say, if you have things that you want to talk about, you have a particular subject that it's of interest to you, then I would love to have you on. And Billy was very positive. about our interview. I've heard him say several times that he found it therapeutic, which is very interesting to have somebody say about me. But anyway, but I want to talk about something that happened with the second, or what was going to be my second interview and my second podcast. So shortly after Billy's interview, I received a message from somebody who wanted to talk about dyspraxia and feminism, which, when it kind of took me aback a little bit when they said that, because I didn't really know how those two things related. And then when I thought about it, I was like, okay, I get it. I get how when you're dyspraxic and, with gender roles, a lot of domestic duties are kind of put on women a lot. So, that might be difficult, and things like makeup and fixing yourself up. I could understand, as a dyspraxic male, I have a hard time with that too. And I don't even have to do as much, but I can imagine the female experience, trying to do your makeup or trying to, dress nice and fancy or whatever, because I have no sense of fashion. I'll wear like a shirt and pants that don't match, and people will be like, you just look wrong, you look off. And I'm just like, I don't know. I found some pants that fit. I found a shirt that I liked. Leave me alone. But, I welcome anybody who wants to come on to talk about anything. There's no need to be exclusive about it. So I was like, all right, if you feel like you have enough to talk about. But, here's the thing. I guess you could say that I'm somewhat of a feminist, but, I listen to Bill Burr. I have my issues with at least modern feminism, at least the people who are like fanatical about it. I have nothing against them personally. It's just that there's the way that certain, feminist groups kind of go about things, especially whenever they start attacking men and demonizing men, that kind of thing, and saying that men are the problem with everything in the world. I always find myself on the wrong or on the opposing side of that anyway. So I've gotten in trouble with certain women who describe themselves as feminists and are very, passionate about it. And, I don't try, to be on their bad side, because I agree with the basic tenets of feminism. So, I don't have any problem with that. But there's two sides to everything, and I'm a male. I understand the male experience, and I've been able to recognize that there are certain double standards in our society that favor women just as there are that favor men. That's just the way it is. And it's very easy if you say something that may be deemed negative towards women or feminism or whatever, it's very easy to offend people. So it was a slippery slope, but I agreed to it, and I made it clear, like, we can talk about it, but we just gotta set up some ground rules and make sure that everything's gonna be civil. And I'm a male. I don't 100%. I mean, I empathize with the female experience, but being of the opposite gender, there's only so much that I can speak on it. So I decided that we'll talk about we'll offer like a counter discussion as well. Like she can talk about feminism, and I could talk about what I understand about female issues, and then I'll talk about men. And so we decided to set up the interview. I set up some questions. I set up some things some points that I thought were relevant to the discussion, and we had that interview. I felt like it went very well. There were some difficulties along the way. Obviously, I struggled to get my points across. And we had a discussion at one point where we were talking about masculinity, or I was talking about masculinity, and I was talking about the fact that I knew several people and I had several friends who seemed to feel like it's very important that they're macho and that they have to uphold these strong masculine ideals, And I was talking about the fact that these types of stereotypes, I guess, with gender, often lead to issues with relationships and dating and stuff. And I was talking about the fact that these guys that feel like it's super important to be super masculine, they tend to attract women who value masculinity more, more than other types. And I was talking about this group of women, who, and it's like they're attracted to a guy because they're masculine, but the guy has they're actually more vulnerable than they seem. It's a front. They try to seem masculine, but inside they're hurting and they're actually very sensitive and vulnerable. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't ever put on this front or this pretense of masculinity or being stoic. I'm very open about my insecurities and things like that. And so usually I don't really mix in the same circles as these types of women who value that sort of thing because, I don't uphold strong masculine values. I am me, and I just try to be me. And I may have masculine traits or effeminate traits, whatever. That's just whoever I am. And, of course, a lot, there's women who will look at that and be like, I don't want anything to do with that. And then some women will value that. But often these men, they struggle with these things. And, once the woman finds out that maybe they're not as strong and stoic and stolid as they thought that they were, they lose interest. And I've met tons of guys who have had that experience. And I could tell when I was talking about it that the woman that I was talking to was offended, or she seemed offended by the fact that I was making a subcategory of women, that I was saying that there's types of women. She's like, I don't know if I like saying that there's different types of women. And it's like, well, there are, there's types of everybody. There's always different personality types. And, it's not offensive to women to say that there are certain groups of women who value masculinity more than others. It's just, that's the way it is. But anyway, other than that, I felt like the discussion went really well. It was very civil. And, I think we touched upon a lot of great points. And of course, it wasn't perfect, And at the end of it, we were talking a lot about sharing our experiences with dyspraxia, and I felt like we did a good job with the discussion. And then, whenever it came to, saving it, and afterwards, she said that she felt like she didn't make some of her points the way that she wanted, which I understand. It's part of being dyspraxic. And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you the recording of our interview, and you can go to certain points, timestamp it, and you can record something that you want to add, and then I'll edit it in whenever I'm putting together the podcast. So, I waited for her to do that. About a week passed, and finally she came back to me and she said, I've changed my mind. I don't want you to release the interview. And I asked her why, and she said that it was basically, she felt like it was offensive to women, and she felt like some of the discussions came across very incel, which if you don't know what incel is, it means involuntary celibate, which are basically, it's a slang term for like guys who are basically bitter about not getting women and not getting laid and things like that. So I didn't really understand where she was coming from. Why she felt like it came across that way. I mean, it's almost kind of insulting to me, like, because it basically is making it sound like I came across as an incel, which I don't think I did at all. So having said that, and then I'm not speaking anything against this person. I respect her decision that she didn't want the interview released. But I'm gonna say this to people who want to be on my podcast and want to be a guest. You have to be sure. And I don't want anybody who's going to change their mind after we record the interview and set everything up to say, oh, you know what? I don't want you to release it. Because the honest truth is that it's a waste of my time. And I'm not saying that my time is like super valuable. It's just that the time that I spend on something that a person's going to decide they don't want released in the end, I could have spent working with somebody else and putting together a different podcast. And I was looking forward to putting up another episode. So now, I didn't have one, So it was going to be more time that I had to spend trying to find another guest and stuff. So it's good now, but I'm just going to say, if you want to be on my podcast, if you want to be a guest, then you have to be sure that you don't want, that you're not going to just flip on me and decide I don't want it to be released, because it's just it's pointless. It's a waste of time. So, and if there's things that are said in an interview that you decide later, I think I want to cut that out, then I'll be happy to edit it out. But I'm just going to let you know, if you come on my podcast, I'm going to put the interview up. You have to agree beforehand. So that's going to be sort of my new policy and my new rule. And I'm glad it happened, because I wouldn't have really thought about that until it happened. And no disrespect to this person. We had our differences, but, it raises up a good point. Like, if you want to be on, you have to be sure that you want to be on, and that you're fine with being recorded, and that you're fine with putting the discussion out there. So I'm going to make it clear to people who want to come on. That's how it's going to work. And other than that, I want to have whoever wants to come on, and we will discuss whatever you want to talk about. Like Billy said, it could be therapeutic. That being said, let's see what I lost my train of thought. The boundaries of language I quietly curse. Oh yeah, I want to make this not just about having an interview, because, I'm not a journalist. I'm not the kind of guy. I didn't want to do this podcast feeling like I have to interview somebody, as opposed to, I want it to be more of a general discussion. I mean, we have a topic, we have things to talk about, but like, I'll put together questions, and I'll ask the questions in the interview, but I don't want it to necessarily feel like I am the host, but I don't want it to feel like you're coming on my show and I'm asking you questions. I want it to be more of, you come on the show and we will chat and we'll talk, and I'll ask questions about the subject, but, I want you to come on feeling like you have something to say. And just keep in mind, it's a conversation. It isn't just me asking you questions. It's just, I'm going to have questions to ask, but you can ask me questions, you can talk about stuff, and we'll discuss it. That's easier for me, because I'm not, a journalist. I'm not really good at asking a bunch of questions and just being like a question answer type thing. I want it to be more like, we have some points that we want to talk about, let's discuss it. So having said that, the next thing that I want to talk about is, there's Dyspraxia Awareness Week is just around the corner. In fact, by the time this is uploaded, it'll be Dyspraxia Awareness Week, and most likely, because it's the 2nd of October right now, and Dyspraxia Awareness Week is between October 4th through the 11th, I believe. And so I'm going to be wanting to do a lot of things with it. I have some ideas. And if other people have other ideas and projects that they want to work on, I would love to be a part of it, because I want to be involved with Dyspraxia Awareness Week. I try to do whatever I can to raise awareness for dyspraxia. Dyspraxia! And one of the things I wanted to do, and I'm gonna want to do podcasts with different people throughout the week. I probably won't be able to do multiple ones in the 1 week, but we'll have these discussions. But another thing I want to do is, I want to have a special meeting for people, and I've talked about this in various dyspraxic groups, but I want to have a meeting with people on Zoom where we record it, and we put it on YouTube, and it's just a group of dyspraxics coming together on Zoom, and just talking about their experiences. And however long it lasts, if it could last 3 hours for all I care. But that's something that I want to do. I don't have many ideas for like real special creative things. You know, my background is in writing and acting. You know, so there's only so much that I can do about that. And doing like special readings and things like that. So that's one thing I'm going to be doing. But yeah, I'd like to get a bunch of dyspraxics together who are comfortable being on camera. They don't have to show their face and they don't have to reveal their real name, but they can come on and they can talk about their experiences, their background, and their struggle with dyspraxia. It's perfectly all right. So if people want to do that, please get with me. You can find me on Twitter at the Theatric Dyspraxic. Well, that's not my Twitter handle. Let me look up exactly what it is. I know I should know this by heart, but I don't. Excuse me. Oh, you can probably just look up the Theatric Dyspraxic on Twitter. But my handle is at Okay, so I'll just spell it. At TheaDyspraxc. Theatric. Just because I couldn't put the Theatric Dyspraxic, the full name. Twitter wouldn't allow me to do that. Wow, yeah. So, yeah. Where do we go from here? There's a lot of interesting things that I'm sure will be happening for Awareness Week, and I'd like to be involved with other people's projects if they would have me. I'd like to go on other people's podcasts, you know. I like the fact that I'm doing one, but, you know, I like to be a guest on somebody else's and just chatting about various things. I've been working on my book quite a bit lately, but that's not going to be ready by Awareness Week, you know. That's still very much a work in progress, but there's progress nonetheless. So I'm about halfway into this episode. I've been rambling and talking for quite a while, but today I'm going to be doing a couple of theatric readings. My neighbors are talking really loud. I hear dogs barking, so I don't know if you'll hear that, but yeah. So first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading something from a friend of mine her name is Sarah Orchard, and she wrote something for something called an APPG, which I'm not really that familiar with, but she sent me what it is. So I'm going to read real quick, and this is a cold reading of basically the definition of an APPG and what they're trying to do with it. So it says the All-Party Parliamentary Group, APPG, on Dyspraxia exists to raise awareness of dyspraxia or developmental coordination disorder and other neurodivergent conditions, and to share ideas and act as a link between Parliament and individuals, organizations, and charities involved with this issue. It is positive that there is now a panel of MPs, don't really know what that means, MPs who are sympathetic and willing to listen and hopefully make and push through policy recommendations. A call for evidence has now been made, and the closing date for this is next Friday, August 28th at 5 p.m. Oh, so this already happened. This was a while ago. Here, if it helps, are details from the press release, saving you clicking on link above, announcing the APPG call for evidence. The All-Party Parliamentary Group on Dyspraxia has launched an inquiry into the experience of dyspraxic people in the economy and wider society. Parliamentarians on the group are seeking to collect evidence from a wide range of people with a particular focus on the experience of dyspraxic people in the economy and ways in which more supportive policies, such as clearer pathways to identification, could benefit the economy as a whole. The role of public services, including schools, further and higher education, health and local authority services, and programs such as access to work. The experience of dyspraxic people during the coronavirus outbreak, including in schools, the APPG's inquiry will look at what steps need to be taken to ensure that dyspraxic people have a more supportive and inclusive experience, and make recommendations to ministers. This evidence collection serves as a scoping exercise, and evidence will be collected into key themes examining the breadth of issues surrounding dyspraxia. The inquiry would welcome evidence in particular from people with lived experience of dyspraxia, including dyspraxic adults, dyspraxic young people, and their families. So this is the part most pertinent to ourselves, she says. Research professionals with an interest in dyspraxia, medical professionals such as occupational therapists, educational professionals and bodies, employers, third sector organizations and voluntary support groups, public sector organizations, including local authorities and government departments. The APPG would welcome submissions that take a range of approaches, including personal accounts, case studies of successful approaches, and research statistics on the issue. While there is no word limit on submissions, it is anticipated that most submissions will be no longer than 4 pages, whilst the names of organizations that submit evidence will be acknowledged, and any report materials, no detail that could be used to identify individuals will be published without explicit prior consent. So that is basically what it is. It's basically an inquiry into what kind of public services can be done for people with dyspraxia in the UK, I'm assuming. Obviously, it doesn't apply to me as much because I'm from the United States, and we have our own issues as far as lack of awareness for dyspraxia. And I'm not really able to do much as far as helping with that, but I'm trying to do whatever I can. So, yeah. But I'm going to be reading Sarah's, submission to the APPG. And she talks about her experiences with dyspraxia. And I've read this over a couple of times, but I'm, probably going to mess up a little bit in the reading. Dyspraxia. So this is Sarah's APPG submission. And I'm going to be reading it in my own voice. I could do a British accent, but nobody wants to hear that. My name is Sarah. I'm 41 years old, and I live in Hertz. I am married with 2 children, a girl aged 14 and a boy aged 11. Both have been diagnosed with dyspraxia. I am a carer for my children. I am a qualified nursery nurse and work part-time babysitting in the evenings. My experiences of trying to get a diagnosis: I'm not formally diagnosed with dyspraxia. I came to believe I had dyspraxia at 37 after my son was diagnosed with verbal dyspraxia. I started researching and realized that I myself had traits and could relate to so much of what I was reading. I went to my GP and tried to explain my situation, only to be told that they don't diagnose adults with dyspraxia on the NHS, the National Health Service. I asked my doctor to look into it for me, but she said there was no help for adults with dyspraxia. She also said, "Why do you need a diagnosis? What would you gain from one? How is it going to change your life?" I became more and more anxious and depressed, and every time I visited the doctor's surgery, I would ask them if they knew how I could get assessed for dyspraxia. Each time I asked, the response was always the same. I was advised to write to my GP, asking her to write to the CCG to ask if they could fund an assessment for me. The CCG refused, saying I wasn't any more of a special case than other people they turned down. I was able to get an appointment with a trainee psychiatrist at a mental health clinic. This led to an appointment with a qualified psychiatrist who read the notes and told me there was no assessment for dyspraxia and diagnosed me with emotionally unstable personality disorder. I also reached out to Dyspraxia UK, a private clinical psychologist, and a private occupational therapist, but I just couldn't afford their prices. In 2017, I contacted the Dyspraxia Foundation for help and support. I asked them if they could help me to get a diagnosis. The lady on the end of the phone asked why I wanted a diagnosis and what I would receive from one. I told her that I wanted to have my condition recognized. to feel validated, and to seek emotional support. She told me to read the information on the website, and she said be wary of going private, as there are people out there who just want to take your money. She couldn't tell me which professional was actually qualified to assess an adult with dyspraxia. All of this left me feeling very let down, frustrated, and confused. Having an assessment and a diagnosis would help me with my mental health. It would show my strengths and weaknesses and explain why I felt so different all my life. I'm also hoping it would help me with future employment, as I would have proof of my condition and so could ask for reasonable adjustments. Experiences in childhood and education. I didn't really enjoy school due to my feeling that I didn't really fit in and my struggles to maintain focus. At one point I changed schools due to bullying. From early on I felt different. I was anxious and always doubting myself, but I didn't know why. At around 7, I remember sitting in the classroom not understanding what was expected of me. I lost a lot of confidence. I would peer at the children either side of me to look at their work. I couldn't keep up when copying from the blackboard and would feel frustrated. I struggled to come up with ideas and was very restless. I would often be told off for talking or daydreaming. As I got older, I found it harder to fit in with my peers. At age 40, I returned to education to try and improve my maths. I also hoped I might have gotten an opportunity to see an educational psychologist. Again, I have been unable to get a diagnosis and the support I need due to my not being in full-time education. Experience of employment and job hunting. For most of my working life, I was unaware I had dyspraxia. I just thought I had learning difficulties. I tried hard to hide these. I managed okay in job interviews as I always tried hard. My employment has generally been in retail, cleaning, and childcare. Daily life as an adult. My struggles include social situations. I either talk too much, ask too many questions, get into trouble due to having no filter, or telling my whole life story. Lack of organization, poor concentration, get bored easily, feel overwhelmed, lose interest, and struggle with coordination and low moods. Feeling embarrassed. I often can't remember instructions given to me at work or in other situations learning new skills. Overthinking, not understanding what is expected of me. Slow processing, lack of spatial awareness. Walking next to people, I bump into them. Rejection issues. I suffer from bad dreams where I'm being left out. Dyspraxia has affected my relationships with other people, including family and friends. I have felt very lonely and left out at times. I have been called weird, frustrating, and lazy. I find it hard to explain my dyspraxia to others. My husband tells me that I don't listen and that it's like living with 3 children. I struggle to be assertive and communicate what I want to say. I find it hard to express myself and my needs. I learned to drive while at college, going through 3 different instructors. I learned in a manual but have switched to an automatic as I struggle to do lots of things at the same time. I will only drive short distances and avoid the motorway. My car has parking sensors all around and the lights come on automatically. I have a sat-nav but sometimes struggle to follow it. This affects getting about and my work prospects. Mental and physical health. I have suffered with poor mental health from an early age. I always felt empty growing up, like something wasn't right, and I never knew what. I look back over my childhood and think it was the lack of understanding and sensory overload that made me nervous. At 17, I began drinking as a coping mechanism. I believe my alcoholism stemmed from the lack of support and understanding. At 19, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and I was put on antidepressants by my GP. In my late 20s, I had counseling from a woman's resource center. In my 30s, I again attended a mental health clinic, was assessed, and put on a 6-session group CBT course, cognitive behavioral therapy course. At 39, I was diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder and put on mood stabilizers alongside my antidepressants. I had 12 sessions of counseling. My counselor believed I had PTSD. Around this time, I also started AA and have stopped drinking. I've met a number of people at AA who have similar stories to my own and who are probably dyspraxic or neurodivergent. Physical health issues I have suffered include poor posture, bad knees, flat feet, and plantar fasciitis. I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce that. Fasciitis, left foot, and IBS. I feel I may have fatigue syndrome, as I always feel very tired after outings, shopping trips, or spending time with friends. I get that. Self-identity. I don't enjoy being dyspraxic. I feel that for me it's a debilitating disability that holds me back. I feel my dyspraxia has gotten worse over the last 10 years due to increased responsibilities and stress. I'm a good listener and have empathy. I'm a good mother and like being part of small groups. I like getting to know people, and I'm now a member of a number of online dyspraxia support groups, including a mental health group, which I set up so people can talk about how dyspraxia affects their mental health. I've learned a lot in AA, and I feel I can support others with what I have learned. Hopes for the future. I would like all GPs to know about dyspraxia and know who to refer adult dyspraxics to. I would like to see a professional working in all mental health teams who could do assessments for adults who have missed out on assessment while in education or the workplace. The education system needs to be more aware of dyspraxia and able to spot the traits in children. I chat to other dyspraxics on social media and can very much relate to their employment struggles. I think shorter hours would suit some of us and feel we should be able to claim PIP, free bus passes, and half price on trains. Experience of COVID-19 pandemic. During lockdown, I mostly stopped working. I have had the children at home and have enjoyed the slower pace of life. Juggling work and looking after my children is very stressful. Kind regards, Sarah Orchard. I very much relate to a lot of that. Especially the emotional stuff, the mental health aspect of it. That's another thing I try to talk about whenever I can on my, just everything I do. In my book, on my blog, in my podcast, videos, all that kind of stuff. I think it's very important to talk about not just the daily struggles of dyspraxia, which is obviously very important, but also the experience of dyspraxia on your mental health and how it affects things like depression, anxiety, your self-image, because I can definitely speak a lot about that. It's a hard life for dyspraxics, but I think it's great to share your story, and hopefully in the future there will be systems in place to help those with dyspraxia and developmental coordination disorder, not just in the UK, which I understand that's where most of the discussion is, but also in the US and all over the world. I think that dyspraxia is a lot more common than we think, or that we at least talk about in our society. And I think that it deserves to be talked about as much as possible. And I think that's why during Dyspraxia Awareness Week, we need to share it as much as possible and talk about it, discuss it with all of us. I'm opening up another document that I'm going to read, at least I'm going to try to read. Let me try. I may have to go on my computer to read it, because my phone is jacked up. Alright, let's try it on my computer as this is recording. I sound like Bill Burr on the Monday morning podcast. Oh, Jesus. We're going to be reading something from a lady. All that good stuff. Anybody else listen? Nah. I already mentioned, this is the second time I've mentioned in this podcast that I'm a fan of Bill Burr. My computer is not very good, but how are you guys doing? You still checking in? You still listening? You having a good time? Having a good time? I'm having a great time. I'm okay. Well, Facebook does not want to load. Dead air. Oh, here we go. I'm still going to try to. This is why people need to email me things that they want me to read instead of on Facebook, because on email I can read it directly. Just all I have to do is go on my phone and open the email. Nah, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. Just in the future, that's the easiest thing for me, because my computer sucks and it's very slow. I bought it for about $100 at a pawn shop. Well, actually, it was $119. No, God, I forget why. I'd have to ask my brother what happened, but for whatever reason, we got $100 from somewhere. I don't know, but we each got $100, and I found a laptop at the pawn shop. I needed one because my old one broke down, and I found this podcast. I'm not paying attention. I'm so sorry. I found a laptop at the pawn shop. You're still with me? You're following along? I just gotta download this freaking file. Okay. Where was I? See, that's another thing about dyspraxia. You lose your train of thought. No, I found a laptop at a pawn shop that's $119, and I only paid $19 for it out of my own pocket because I spent my money that I got for free from somewhere. I think it was my apartments for some reason. Alright, this document is opening up, and I've wasted your time already. But blame my computer. Is this even still recording? Yeah, it's still recording. It's still recording. You see why I need a guest? So I have somebody else who can talk, so it's not just me. Where is the... I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pause this recording. I'm gonna pause this. What the come on. I hate technology. Come on, let me go back to Audacity. What are you doing? Either open up the freaking... Oh my god. I can't even pause it. I can't even pause this recording. This is dreadful. This is dreadful. Oh, there we go. It's opening up now. It's opening up now, people! We got it! Everything's good. Everything's good. Of course, it's taken forever to open, but at least it's opening now. Oh boy, alright, let's open up. Why is it taking so long to open up this file? There we go, and there we go. Alright, I got another thing I'm gonna read, and then that's gonna be the last thing that I read. This is another, I think it's another APPG submission. I'm not going to say this person's full name just because I haven't asked them if it was okay to read to put their full name. But they said it was okay for me to read this. So, her name is Jill, and it's listed under, so it's my background. My name is Jill. I was born in 1961 in Reading, Berkshire, UK. To a mother who was an English teacher in a local secondary school and a father who was a chemistry and physics lecturer at Newbury College of Further Education. I have one sibling who is younger and, as far as I'm aware, is neurotypical. I now live near Cheddar in Somerset. Cheddar? You live in Cheddar in Somerset. I should not be joking about this. She's probably going to pour her heart out. My childhood experiences. I grew up in a small village in Berkshire and had a wonderful childhood playing out and enjoying junior school. I remember being taken to see some medical specialists about problems with incontinence, but they couldn't find anything wrong. So I just got told off a lot for not being able to hold my bladder. I always felt a bit different because my father was a preacher and his strict Christian-based religion, which myself and my brother were brought up in. We attended Sunday school every Sunday and were expected to mix with the whole congregation as the children of a leader widely known in the South and Midlands of the UK. At home, I was loud and extroverted, and often the instigator of the local group of kids finding fun things to do around our village. Whenever we went on adventures further afield, I managed to get lost, but insisted we keep going until we found a road on a stream to follow. I can't read. I remember nearly breaking my neck every few weeks when platform shoes came into fashion. I turned my ankles frequently, and have also had hypermobile knees. I was intelligent and expected to pass the 11 plus, but completely messed it up and was sent to the local comprehensive school, which shocked both my parents, who couldn't understand why. Life in secondary school started to get noticeably difficult. My pre-diagnosis experiences. At junior school, I don't remember many problems, and although I initially took ages to learn to ride a bike, I kept practicing and eventually did my cycling proficiency test when I was about 10 years old, but I don't remember getting a certificate. I also remember having to work very hard learning to swim and could only really get the hang of breaststroke, possibly because both arms and legs were doing the same things. Writing was another sticking point, so I spent loads of time during holidays practicing it over and over, as well as coloring in to make sure I could stay inside the lines. I was doing okay in much of my education for most of my secondary school life until I had to sit any examinations. My classwork was good and my reports were all reasonably positive. I did my homework on time and I was expected to get 8 GCE O levels. The British grading system is totally different than the US. We got A's, or not, actually we got like 70s was like a C, 80s was like B, I guess. I was very mediocre at sports, but was okay at high jump, discus, and breaststroke. I seemed able to make friends easily and thought up fun ideas for things to do, but this was not appreciated by all my peers. I was often psychologically and physically bullied and eventually learned to keep my mouth shut and not become teacher's pet. I remember Paul stabbing me with a compass during a history lesson one morning. I had my hair pulled regularly. I was ridiculed regularly because Mom made my clothes, and I was often threatened by Angela, the school bully, who was going to beat me up but never did. A couple of brave schoolmates tried to help out, but this just made things worse, so I never said a word to anyone. At the appropriate time, I sat my mocks and got terrible marks, which resulted in lots of pressure on me from all angles. As you can imagine, with both parents and education, this was not acceptable. I was given a strict timetable of revision and tried all kinds of methods to help the knowledge stick in my head, rewriting facts, recording my notes, mind maps, etc. I sat my 6 GCEs and 3 CSEs and only got passes in geography and English language. I was then enrolled at Newberry College, where my father worked, to resit English, maths, chemistry, and physics. Does sit, is that another word for like taking an exam? You sat your 6 GCEs. I'm guessing that's another word for I took these exams. I don't know. There's a noticeable difference in the vernacular of British language and British English and American English. I lost my place. The social life was brilliant at Newberry College and had lots of overseas students, and I was included in lots of partying. Unfortunately, there was no additional support to help me as I was obviously intelligent, but just needed to work harder. I only managed to pass all but the maths exam and then went on to look for work. Luckily for me, my father's best friend worked in the civil service and so gave me a good reference. In September 1978, I was employed as an assistant scientific officer at the Transport and Road Research Laboratory in Crowthorne, and due to the lack of available public transport, I had to leave home at 17 and find lodgings locally. Once in the civil service, I was encouraged to go on further BTEC courses in sciences and computer studies, which I managed to gain more qualifications in. I was okay most of the time with my full-time job, but got bored very quickly, and in 1982 started doing part-time youth work in the evenings at a local school. This was all before I was born, well before I was born. From 1987, I also attended several of Berkshire County Council's training courses during the weekends to become more proficient at my youth work, and got several certificates across many different disciplines, including counseling for eating disorders, sex, sexuality and relationships, drugs and young people, equal opportunities, child protection, and many more subjects. During this time, I also did a Mensa test and became a member, so I know I'm smarter than average, even though I feel like I struggled compared to others. Isn't Mensa the organization for people who are tested as geniuses? That's impressive. I didn't know that about you, Jill. At the Transport and Roads Research Lab, I worked in several areas, including traffic calming, the introduction of seatbelts, accidental analysis, overseas research, assistant librarian, and records management. Wow, she's got a full deck. In 1995, I was offered voluntary redundancy from the civil service and accepted, with the lump sum I purchased with my council flat outright, and continued doing part-time youth work. By 1997, I was working 5 different part-time youth work jobs and had been accepted into Reading University to do a BA in Community and Youth Studies. I loved learning about youth work, which I am still very passionate about. But public speaking was always stressful. After my second year, I was able to choose more lucrative jobs due to my qualifications, which meant I didn't have to work so much to keep my bills paid, and I was not exhausted all the time. In our final year, a colleague doing his dissertation on dyslexia suggested I take the basic test, which I did, and then made an appointment with the educational psychologist to discover if I would be entitled to support with my dyslexia. During the testing, she said there were signs that I may have an additional condition, which she was also going to test me for. My post-diagnosis journey. I was 39 when I was diagnosed with dyspraxia in March 2000, in the third term of my third and final year at Reading University. Although the educational psychologist's focus was on the academic issues, she advised me to get the book Living with Dyspraxia by Mary Cawley. She also told me I would be likely to need counseling because it was a life-changing experience to discover this kind of thing. In the beginning, I read lots about the condition and was getting depressed. Eventually, I decided I had survived quite well so far. Yeah, you sure did. All the things that you did in your youth. Quite impressive. Eventually, I decided I have survived quite well so far, and therefore I would not worry about it or focus on the negatives, but just carry on the best I could. On getting my degree, I was soon employed full-time by Surrey County Council as a neighborhood youth worker. I initially explained my dyspraxia to my supervisor, but he seemed not to understand or care. I became disrespectful towards him and thought I was being singled out until discussions with my colleagues showed that 3 others were also unhappy with his attitude. We approached the area manager, who suggested we mentor each other for support, and this continued for approximately 2 years, in which time the other 3 people left their jobs because they couldn't work with him. This episode indicated to me that disclosing my dyspraxia would not be beneficial. Over the years, the youth work budget was pared down because youth work is not considered to be a statutory device and therefore is easier to underfund. As we all took on more responsibility and had to justify our methods for spending by achieving measurable outcomes, our work became focused on mainly those young people really struggling with the transition into adulthood. I loved this work and enjoyed working closely with lots of organizations to support young people in a variety of creative ways. I stayed in post until 2016, through several reshuffles. Due to the changes of focus and being expected to do much more paperwork, I eventually underwent a breakdown and was supported by access to work to get back to my job with suitable adjustments. This was short-lived, because soon after I had to change areas, and now I had a supervisor and manager who did not understand my condition, and they decided I needed to be micromanaged to do a good job. After another breakdown and nearly a year of being signed off by my doctor as unfit for work, I agreed to leave my job as I couldn't see any other alternative. By the time I left Surrey County Council, I was an experienced trainer and had also got my assessor's qualifications by training and supporting lots of part-time workers and senior youth club members into youth work. Looking back, when applying for jobs, I was regularly in the first 3 applicants selected due to a good CV and all the training, but when it came to the interview process, I was never the first choice. Luckily, in looking back when applying for jobs, Luckily, in several jobs, I was second on the list, and in 3 of those jobs, the first place person didn't take up the role, so I was employed and became very well respected for my work. Since 2016, my health has been an issue, and I have only managed to work a few part-time jobs, namely learning support, assistant, and caring. These have been unusually short-term due to physical or emotional constraints. Since moving to Somerset in 2017, I have been keeping busy by doing 4 different volunteer jobs, but during lockdown, only 2 of these are still continuing. I am currently secretary of our local community choir, and I am a Samaritan's listener. My physical health. During my childhood, I was eating regularly, and my mom was a great cook, whereas my attempts were less than delicious. I left home at 17, and my regular meal times became more haphazard, with plenty of takeaways to avoid having to cook. Unfortunately, my health in adulthood has been appalling. By the time I completed my degree in 2000, I was unable to walk more than 200 yards without needing to rest. My family and friends were very worried about my physical and mental health. In 2010, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and was classed as super morbidly obese. Through the support of Slimming World, I managed to lose 12 stone. Is that the same as pounds? I've heard people use the word stone to refer to losing weight, but we don't use the term stone in America, and was doing well until I lost my job at Surrey County Council in 2016. I regained 4.5 stone over the next 2 years, and I am now going back down very slowly and was finally referred for bariatric surgery in October 2018. Meanwhile, the 7 stone difference has helped me to reverse the diabetes so that it is controlled via my improved diet, but I am now struggling with arthritis in both hips. How my dyspraxia affects my daily life as an adult. I have poor balance, dreadful posture, and lack rhythm. I bump into things frequently and can't walk beside someone without bumping into them. I usually look a little unkempt and very rarely wear makeup. My brain works twice as fast as my mouth, and I often forget where I am in conversation. When I've spoken to you, I have not noticed that. I don't know if that's me being American and you being British, that it just doesn't, I don't pick up on it. I don't know, but I've never noticed that. But I notice it in myself all the time. I am unable to find appropriate words in the middle of a sentence and often stutter or just freeze when it happens, and am not vocal in large groups. I have difficulty tracking and relocating, so watching TV and reading or crafting at the same time is difficult. I find it impossible to remember more than 2 directions at once and have to note everything down immediately before I forget it. Processing emotions takes ages, and I have poor sense of awareness of body cues, such as pain, hunger, thirst, cold, etc. In 2010, I had a large ulcer on my shin, cellulitis in the same leg, and a heavy cold. So when I went for my weekly checkup, my doctor was alarmed and informed me that she could tell by the smell I had gangrene in my leg. The team quietly debribed the dead tissue, but were shocked that I could live with the resulting pain without analgesics. I now get tremors in my right side while gripping anything or trying to hold a pose. I get stressed, depressed, and anxious very easily, but try really hard to hide it. Sleep is erratic, and I'm always exhausted. Self-esteem is low, and when somebody contacts me, my first thought is, what have I done wrong now? I can drive a manual car and ride a motorbike and love doing both, but the necessary concentration to do so tires me out. I'm a strong, independent woman who has spent most of her adult life encouraging other people to realize how amazing they are. My interpersonal experiences. I always need to be good friends with any man I'm interested in, but I am then scared to change the relationship and possibly lose a good friend. I don't yearn for children as I have enjoyed their company for so many years, and I am happy to remain an auntie and a godmother. I seem to make friends easily, but generally have a few close friends that I've known for 30 plus years. I'm stubborn and very pedantic and like things done my way, so I don't expect to find a partner, but will be delighted if one appears. My mental health. As age and culture have changed and advanced, I, like so many others, have been more open and honest about my mental health. I have survived by using the local mental health support systems in both Dorset and Somerset as directed. In the past 10 years, I have attended 2 courses of cognitive behavioral therapy and paid for additional counseling at various times of acute stress. I have a couple of apps on my phone to play music to help me relax. I use a journal and a diary to brain dump, as this helps sort through my thoughts and feelings. I read lots of fiction. I use crafting as a way to relax, and also sell a few pieces through a display at a friend's shop. I have tried mindfulness, Reiki, crystals, massage, and various other therapies, with varying degrees of success, but now I tend to stick to things that suit me best. Finding support online during the recent lockdown has been essential, and the Dyspraxic Circle Facebook group has helped me to come to terms with my struggles and enabled me to survive and thrive. And that's the end of that. Thank you very much, Jill, for sending that to me and allowing me to read it on my podcast. I am sorry for butchering some of the pronunciation and all that kind of stuff. It was the first time I read it. But, yeah, I relate to a lot of that. That's the thing about us Dyspraxics, is that we have a lot of very similar experiences, and all of us just about understand what it's like to feel different. A lot of us have experienced things like bullying and not fitting in with our peers. And I think that it's great to always talk about these types of things. I'm going to wrap up my show this episode. I hope that people still enjoyed it despite not having a guest. And, you enjoy just hearing me talk. And if you'd like for me to do another one of these podcasts where I just do my theatric readings and just read. Why am I hungry? That's random. If you just want me to read something that you wrote, particularly about dyspraxia, but it can literally be anything, I will read it happily. And, that is the way it is. Oh, you know. I'm getting very tired right now. That's a wonderful way to end a podcast. No, I enjoyed reading those. I identified with a lot of both Sarah's and Jill's stories and their experiences. And we're all survivors, And I feel bad because, obviously back in the day, there was even there's very little awareness for dyspraxia now, but there was even less back then. So there are people who went through their whole lives with dyspraxia without understanding what they were going through. So yeah, I want to thank you all for listening, Theatrics. And next time, in my next episode, I'm going to have a guest on. I'm not really sure yet who it is. I have a few people who have talked about it, but stay tuned for that. And it is Dyspraxia Awareness Week as of this upload. So I want to do whatever I can for it. Set up a meeting with other dyspraxics where we come on and we get together and we talk about things. I like to play some games, do some funny stuff. I always like to do stuff for comedy. So anybody that wants to do and doing for those of us who are dyspraxic and we have our artistic interests, like for me, performing, I like to act, I like to read stuff, I like to, to do comedy. And there's dyspraxic musicians, there's dyspraxic artists. Share it. Please share your work. And let's all do something for Dyspraxia Awareness Week. So, thank you for listening. I'm going to sign off now. So, have a good one, Theatrics, and enjoy Dyspraxia Awareness Week. Ta! Play it, Mike.